Hello everyone, I'm Lilli Paasikivi from Helsinki, and one thing that comes to my mind when I hear your really good opening speeches is about, I have been as a singer involved for many years in different world premieres and different new pieces, and it's not only once, but very often I feel that the end result is not developed to the end. But one tragic thing that happens is that this apparatus on a national stage or in a big house is so inflexible that by the time all the scores have been written out and the rehearsal schedules done, that it's very difficult to change anything anymore. You might amputate a scene or an aria or something like that, but it's there is almost no flexibility at that stage anymore. And also, at least in Finland, very often when we've had urpremiere, the pieces don't come back. It's very unusual that they get a second chance. If you think of a more historical pieces, you might find a first version, a French version, or Italian version, or a cut version, and very, very many different versions. But it's at least I haven't seen very many pieces that do have a chance to develop after the premiere. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions and comments? Yes, we go here. What is your name? Introduce yourself.
Hello, yes, I'm Matthias Claesson. I worked for 30 years as a designer and then came librettist, and then I started as a director, but I wanted to be a singer from the start. Anyhow, I think what you said about the involvement of the management in the process, I feel like designer, when you get a commission, someone asks you, can you please do Arabella or whatever, Arabella, or West Side Story or whatever, new premiere. I feel as someone who is supposed to create this, design this, direct it, put your passion into it, I want to see that passion from the intendant too, from the commissioner. If it's like, okay, do this. And maybe it's like, and don't do it like at the Folkoperan 10 years ago. Or it's almost never anything. And then you see them at the premiere 2 years later. And I want to know, hey, why do you want this piece? Why did you put it on the repertory? What do you not want? What do you see in it? And I did my big direction here 1 year ago and worked with Birgitta Svendén, our intendant here. And she had a lot of ideas how you could do or not, and we discussed the sort of concept and blah 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 blah. She was involved. She's on the stage. She's everywhere, and I don't think that's hindering. I think this idea that the artist is so sensitive, if you touch him he will die. I think that is so wrong. We want your passion too, and I think what you describe, this is how it should be. And if you don't know, is that horrible? Should that tree come down or be cut? Or is that scene too long? Please tell us, because we are always wondering, is it right? Is it right? Is it right? So I think a much more involved, and also from the point of view, hey, this is 4 hours minus 15 minutes long. They won't sit through it. This is a valid point. Everything is a valid point. So I think this correspondence should be much more dynamic, and the piece will benefit from it.
Yeah. We have someone here in the back. Okay, we're going to you, then you, Sven here is the next one. Please keep it brief and concentrated. Maybe a question for the panel also.
I try to. My name is Anders Nilsson. I'm a composer and I've written some operas, and now I'm working on my third opera. And I am very interested in political opera. I think, as you said, Nils, I totally agree with you that the subject for an opera libretto should be concerning the today's people's concerns, problems, and politics in a way. I really emphasize that. But when it comes to the social background of the audience and who appears on those performances, I agree with you, it's mostly middle class. And myself, I'm from the working class, and that's why perhaps I'm stressed this political emphasis. I think there is a problem with the people from the social environment which I come from. When you're speaking about opera, the most common comment you get, well, I don't understand what they are singing about. I can't grasp the words. I can't grasp what they are, where the message is.
Do you have a question in there?
Yeah, I have a question. How should we develop? Because, you know, people tend to musicals very often. But how are we going to develop the opera in a way that people from the third class, from workers' class, can grasp what they are saying about? I have my personal experience of the opera, who was a great success with 25,000 people, about Sarah Leander. And I think the one reason is to that I was writing syllabical music.
So you want to know how can we engage the working class or people who have no background or a completely different demographic profile than the standard opera? How can we engage them, and then in particular in new opera? Any one of you want to take that?
I just think it's important to engage more people from various parts of the society, but without any colonial attitude. Like, for instance, when you were talking about doing Romeo and Juliet, I think that's a typical example of colonial attitude. So it's a long-term work.
Well, I'm not sure if I find myself in the same description of the situation. I think in Norway, or I would believe it's not very different in Sweden, the class differences are in one respect, especially in an economical respect, is getting more even. But there are new classes, as I mentioned in my speech, that the distance between the people who have knowledge and know has the access to art and the people who do not. But I'm not sure if the way to compensate for that is to change the art in order to make it more accessible. I'm not sure if that's the right way of thinking. I mean, we have an art which is important to us and that tells important stories about our lives. I think it's a tricky situation and a tricky question. I'm not sure if the solution is just, you know, about classes and about trying to reach out with making it more simple or making it more. We have to get. I'm not sure about that. Yeah.
Just briefly as well. I think there's a bigger question here. The bigger question is there is no other art form like us in consistently telling the world, oh, we have to convince you that we're accessible and we're ordinary people and, you know, come and join us. And, you know, theatre doesn't spend its time publicly doing this kind of stuff. It just gets on with it. So I really worry we're becoming self-fulfilling prophecies, because a lot of the people I know who don't go to opera tell me similar things. But then I said, so what opera have you seen? And they actually haven't been to opera. And I say then, personally, invite them to come to opera. Then they have an amazing time. And actually, a lot of people love things they don't understand. I mean, the whole pop charts, the diction in the pop charts nowadays is just terrible, isn't it? What are they singing? You know, as my granny would say. So I think there's a very complex issue there, actually.
Yes, we have a question first from this, sir. Just your name and what you do, and then the question, please.
My name is Augustine, and I'm a dramatic. I'm a dramatist. I never wrote a libretto. I just want to say a comment about, you talk about tradition. I guess we should understand traditions in the way Gustav Mahler said. Tradition is not worshipping the ashes. Tradition is passing on the fire.
Oh.
Very good.
Very good. Thank you for that. This lady here in the striped shirt here in the back is next, and then we have next here.
Well, my name is Gunnar Bergström, and I've spent lots of years trying to find out what opera is really about. So I wrote my thesis with the name of In Search of Meaning in Opera. And what I came to, the very key, is that, and it was Monteverdi who found it out, was that the librettist and the composer, they write verbal and vocal actions. They do not write music or just words. They write vocal and verbal actions. And when I see modern opera, I so often lack that very idea. It's a narrative, or it's sort of ideas getting together. It can be in a wonderful way, like in Staden, which I thought really worked, though it was sort of not narrative. It wasn't that easy to grasp. But often the opera composers and librettists try to tell something very obvious, and there is no action in it. And when I see the modern operas, very seldom the opera singers are involved acting. Okay. They are sort of showing off or doing the thing, but they are not acting. Not always, of course, but that's the key I want to give you. Thank you.
Great. Anyone want to comment on that?
No, I completely agree. I think it's a very interesting aspect, and it's sort of underlining that a piece of theater, music theater, is not only a score. It is a complex fusion of and where the acting and the theatrical aspect is probably the most important thing. You are very fortunate here in Sweden. For about 35 years ago, you had the world premiere of a piece that has been one of the most successful pieces in the modern history of drama, Ligetis Le Grand Macabre, Stora Macabre, which was first performed here in Stockholm. And if you look at that success of that piece and how it has transformed, Lily, you said that there are very few pieces that can be developed throughout the years. I mean, it had a new premiere in the Salzburg Festival in '96. Now, yes, I think it was. And now it is really one of the most performed operas at all. Yes, it was revised and drastically revised. Most of the dialogues were cut out and really quite drastically revised with the supervision of Ligeti himself. And now we are opening the next season in Oslo with the same piece. And I'm sure it's a very accessible opera. I think it will have a wide audience. I think today this is an opera that can really speak to a wide range of people. So that's one of the, maybe I try to be very optimistic today, but I think there are signs in today that we are more open for at that time when you did Stora Macabre here, I remember that Birgit Nilsson was interviewed afterwards, and she said, well, I spent 10 minutes and then I went out. You know, it was at that time a very controversial piece.
Sven Müller?
Yeah, hello, I'm Sven Müller, Artistic Director of the Royal Danish Opera, a colleague of ANNILESE from the Danish National Opera. 2 points and a quick question. First of all, I have found myself a lot in the situation that ANNILESE described, where a composer comes to me, a librettist, and tells me about their opera, asking me to perform it. And then I begin to get interested and say, well, let's see about who could direct it. And they say, oh, well, directing is my friend A. Okay, who could actually conduct it? Oh, conducting it is my friend B, and the lead singers are C, D, and E. And you must understand also the artistic directors, we love art, we love to create art, and we love to have an influence in art. So that is maybe not the best way to get us on board, if then it turns out that all they are expecting is me to give the facilities, and oh, Sven, you have to pay us, of course. The second point is actually the subjects of the operas. I don't want to say names, famous composers recently have written a new Oedipe or a new Medea. I have twice been approached if I would like a new opera on Hamlet, both by a British and by a Danish composer, thinking because it's Denmark, it must be obvious to do a new opera on Hamlet. And I think actually, where are the themes of today? Where are the themes that interest us, that can get a crowd into the opera today? And that is what you should all think about. And that would be my question, where do we find these themes?
Yes, great. Anneliese, you and your Las Vegas opera, maybe you should start answering this.
Oh, okay, yes. Any transvestite-themed opera, I'm your management, obviously, for that. The thing, I don't know if any of you saw Anna Nicole at the Opera House on TV, yeah. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name, the opera that the Châtelet, is doing on the porn star turned politician.
Cicciolina.
Thank you very much. That's interesting to me because, you know, we talk about racism in opera. Sorry, not in opera. Oh, well, here, that's another theme. Yes, let's go there at the next conference, okay? But we talk about, you know, non-representation of people who aren't like us in opera. Well, we can barely get, and I don't know your statistics here, but we can barely get equal representation of women in the UK and Ireland in terms of people running companies and being commissioned to write main-scale operas. And actually, as much as the artistic validity of things like Anna Nicole and the Châtelet Opera are, yet again, the thing that's been commissioned is something about a sexually voracious, complex woman who dies in the end. So that's a modern opera, which I have seen time and time again. So that's the thing, it's finding things, as Sven says, that are about now, but aren't structurally propping up the same cliches in opera. So have a wee think about that, maybe. Yeah.
You want to add to this anything, Per or Nils?
No, I think I stress the fact that I think it has to do with us working, that we're not diverse enough. So we have to start with a good music education for the children and work on that. I think that's very important.
Per?
Well, maybe I would say that to make an opera is extremely difficult, and it's really to use the whole apparatus and to be able to really come into a main house and do that. It's very, very difficult, and the problem, maybe the major challenge we have, is to get enough volume in order to get out the really the top good work, and sometimes then the managers like we have a tendency to make a cheap way out. I mean, we seek for a Anna Nicole subject or something like that we know is very successful or attractive somehow to an audience, and so that's probably the main challenge. It's so expensive to make opera as well. So I think still, I mean, that is done and it's going to be done, but and to bring up more volume and to have smaller places to have the composers to really try out on a small scale. I think that's very, very important. It is being done, but I think that's crucial in order to get really us managers to trust in a composer, say, now you're ready for really do the big opera.
Yeah, and things like, you know, somebody mentioned musicals earlier, you know, whether you like it or not, something like Les Mis or something, like, that's amazing. They took that book, how big's that book, like that, they made something that connects with people. But also as well, musicals are ruthless with their creative talent. You know, producers are ruthless. I've heard horrendous stories about, you know, people who go through previews. You know, Richard Jones, the opera director, did this Titanic musical. I don't know if it's not on his biog, but he won Tony Awards and things. Anyway, it was one of the most hellish experiences of his life, because weeks and weeks of previews with the producers sitting behind him going, I don't like that costume, or you need to... And the big thing for him was, there were constant meetings about how do we get an SO, and he didn't know what the SO was until somebody said it's a standing ovation. You need a standing ovation. And you know, they were all sitting around the table, going, hair pulled out, they were barely speaking to each other. Richard was going, no, that's the show, that's the show. And the assistant director said, so obviously it's a story of the Titanic, built in Belfast, sorry about that. Anyway, so, you know, the ship goes down, and, you know, then there's the end scene was the grieving relatives. And the assistant director said very quietly, I've got an idea. What about if the dead people came back from the grave at the end? And the producers went, that's it, that's our SO! And poor Richards had to then, with the composer, write this scene, which they were in agony about, to have the dead people come back at the end.
Okay.
So...
But more specifically to the question from Sven, I would like to get more from you, like, about the choice of material. That's, I think, is more like the essential question, the choice of material. Like, what stories do you want?
They have to be passionate. They have to be passionate about what they want to tell, as you said. But I find...
Is there a lack of imagination among composers in their choice of material?
No, I think they are a bit scared not to fit in.
I agree. I'm fed up hearing... I'm not fed up because you might have a brilliant idea, so discount everything I say. But what I get all the time are Greet Miss. I get The Tempest a lot. I get the same things all the time. I get
Apocalypse Now.
Thanks. Yeah. I get post-apocalypse.
Post-apocalypse
stuff a lot. I get things about shopping a lot.
Well, most of the most successful operas in the last 20, 30, 40 years are based on very simple stories. Now they're quite reduced books, and it is the expansion, that the ability of the music to go on and to open up, which is, I think, the most important reason why they're successful. And what I'm looking for as a manager is to find the composer who's really able to, with his or her music, to find a suitable theme or plot where this musical world can flourish or be expressed. And opera is really about music. If you go back into history, and from Monteverdi, Mozart to Wagner, it is the ability of the music to bring this story or this tale to another level. That's what really makes the difference. So that's, I think, the most important thing I'm looking for when I'm trying to find a composer.
Next question.
Hello, I'm Carl Lunander Skarin, a Swedish composer and singer, and I'm lucky enough to be one of the presenters later on, so I will give some of my points. I think I will give you one question and one point. I would say that opera is about what can be expressed with the voice. So, I mean, the music that is needed for a theme that where the singer, the voice can sort of add something. So, of course, that's why most good operas are about love and death. But my question is, being a Swedish composer, and let us say that we have this situation that we have seen very, very often in Sweden, and I'm sure we have the same thing in Finland and in Norway and Denmark. You have this success. You have one opera that is actually very successful. And what we see in Sweden very much, and my question is, do you have the same problem in your countries, that you have this territorialism, that the commissioner sort of owns the work, and the other possible stages in the country will not touch upon it because it was the commissioner's sort of territory. And I think that is a cultural, political problem we have in Sweden. We actually do get a lot of new operas here, some of which are great, like, I mean, Anders' piece, for instance. But they will not even tour Sweden because it's a commissioner's sort of courtesy. Could you comment on that, please?
I mean, it can work the other way around. You can approach someone, because I don't have as much money as other people, but I can offer other people other things in terms of very flexible. I mean, I can build whole projects around what's needed. I can play things not in a house. I can do them elsewhere. So I sometimes think, because I always ask, I might approach a composer and say, do you want to come and do something for me? And they don't want to. So because they feel they belong to a bigger house, or they will get less money to produce something. I don't mean less money for them necessarily. I mean less money, for a big show. So, it works the other way. Sometimes I think composers can sacrifice artistic potential in an organization for something. They want the brand of a big house, or a lot of, I'm going to be very naughty here, and I don't mean to be disrespectful. What I do find quite frustrating as well is that sometimes it's hard to be told, I can't do anything on this project for you because I've got to deliver a big score for a big house in 4 years. I find that quite difficult as well. Because I think, well, could you just even do a one act for me? Or is there any way we could, use of time, that's also an element.
Per?
That problem hasn't struck me at all, actually. I think I would be more than happy to share if we have a success. Of course, the first run of the half year or it will be nice to have it in-house, but if somebody would... It's so expensive also to export operas, and if another house would come and say, we would like to do the same thing, I would be very, very happy. I think this is just would make the whole project more exciting for everybody. And as you say, I have more ideas than possibilities, and I'm actively looking for partners in the district of Norway, or even now we have a meeting tomorrow and see how we can share ideas in a Nordic circuit. To say, if Lily would say, let's make an opera together, and you have the opening night, and I said, I take it over and do it in Oslo afterwards, I think it would be brilliant if we could share these ideas. So I don't see that as a problem at all.
Mm-hmm. Great. We're going to take now just 5 more questions, and please make it just brief. Here.
Yes, hello. I'm Katarina Aronsson. I'm dramaturg at the Royal Swedish Opera and working with quite a lot of commissions, and I see many of the people that I'm working with here today. There have been a lot of talk about composers and about the importance of music, and also talk about tradition and, on the other hand, political, how to find the interesting subjects for the operas. And I've been thinking all the time that when you think about Verdi, when you think about Mozart, when you think about Wagner, they were all political. They wanted to tell something from the stage. They were dramatists, but they had also the ability to write music, and very, very good music. I don't think that we only can have very good music on stage. I mean, very good music can be played in concert halls, but on stage, at the opera, you really have to have great dramatical pieces. And Heine Goebbels, for instance, is a very good example of a composer who is interested in what can I do on stage. He wants to express something on stage. So I'm waiting for the dramatists. We have some dramatists here too. To I think we can get some help from them, because they are all the time thinking about commenting on what's happening today in society and putting those comments on stage. We have this problem in opera that it takes time. We can't sort of, this is in the air now, and then we ask someone to write a play about it, and then in a couple of months we can put it on stage. We can't do that in opera. We have to wait for 2 years perhaps, or 3 years. And so that's very, very frustrating, I think. Very, very frustrating. But please, some dramatists, tell us what to do.
We have a whole session devoted to librettos and dramatists, actually, in the afternoon. So we'll really dig into that topic then. You had a question? Yeah.
Maybe not so many questions for the moment.
If you have, can I say?
I must just say something, please.
Yeah.
My name is Beryl Cornhill, and I started as an academic, and then I went to the opera school in Gothenburg, and then I worked as a playwright and librettist, and still do. You said that the working class is, you must go to a lower level to, no, but it hurt like that. I think that, yeah, please. I think that I lived in so many different classes. I come from the farmers and from the working class, so some kind of hybrid I am. And I think that there are so many different people in the working class. You can find intellectuals, you find brilliant people. In the middle class, believe me or not, you can find very stupid people. So I don't think you can talk about classes in that way. I think why the working class won't come to the opera, I think it's many times more a political thing and a social thing. And how to, if they know will come, what is the way to make them interested and to come back? I think a very good play, we come to that later today, as you said, a very good play must have different levels. So you can choose a level in what mood you are, how experienced you are to the opera or to the theater or whatever. Different levels. A good play like, for example, Shakespeare and Strindberg.
Yeah, it's great, but we are in time
really
now.
Work with different levels. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Can I just ask everyone to ask questions or just very brief comments when you comment, because at the end we have this 5-minute madness where you can really, pour out your heart about everything you heard today. And really, we would like to hear everything about your life and experiences. Is great, but like for longer insights, please, at the end of the day. And the next question was here. Like I say, compact is essential.
Very compact living, yes. My name is Susan Marco. I'm a dramatist, a dramaturg, and director sometimes. And I think it has been very interesting up until now. And we're talking about how we need interesting and political themes. And you're constantly talking about composers. Sometimes I hear the little word director, singer, but hardly ever I hear librettist. And my question is, does it happen that a librettist comes alone and says, I have this great idea, and you work like in the movies, for example, where producers often call themselves barnmorska, I don't know the Swedish, midwife. Mm-hmm. You say, does it happen that somebody, a librettist, comes and says, I have this idea, and you say, I know the perfect composer for this. Mm-hmm. And I immediately get this idea of the director also. So I will put together a creative theme around the librettist's idea.
Yeah, great. Nils, you want to answer that?
Yes, it has happened. A brief answer, yes, it has happened, and it has turned out very well.
After. Sir? He's the next. You?
I don't think exactly in that way, but very often I have had an idea of a theme or a comedy once, for instance. I think we want to make a comedy, and then to find a composer is willing to sort of get close to the idea you have, or like Yuri, and we are now developing a new opera, Peer Gynt. It was not that Yuri came to me, I want to make an opera, Peer Gynt, but we sat together, and so I think actually we found out that that was the right project, and to approach ideas to composers, together with maybe librettists or people who can develop it. I think it's a teamwork. But still, operas, I mean, the composer's influence is so essential. You know? And it's very rare that you will come to a really good composer and say, can you please do this? And he will say, oh yes, I'm just waiting for it. It could happen maybe, but most of the time it's important to go to the composer who you really believe in and think that this is a guy who can develop the music into an opera, and then to find out what is his wish, or where is the theme that can inspire him in order to do it. So it's a big conversation, but I think, of course, the theme and the librettist is very, very important. I don't think it is a lack of good ideas, there are so many good ideas, and most artists I know are extremely politically engaged in some way or another. I don't really know many creative artists who are not, in a way. So, and every time you put on a new piece, it's a really important political statement in one way or another.
Yes. Do you want to comment, or should
I've
we
never
move to the
been
next
approached
question?
separately by a librettist. I have created projects where I have thought, oh, I'll ask that person to go with that composer, you know, to see what happens. So I suppose I'm in at the conception rather than at the birth, but never.
We will talk more about librettos and really dig into this process. And the nice people here from the first session will also be here actively in the front in that session. Next question was here from.
Okay, just two things. My name is Peter Sommer. I'm an Austrian conductor, and I'm based in Flensburg, next to the border to Denmark. I'm music director of the Schleswig-Holstein Landestheater there. Two short things. The good news for the composers are that musicians and singers nowadays are much more used to contemporary music than 10, 15, 20 years ago. I talked a lot of this with Michael Bode. We did Three Sisters in Zurich in the last weeks. It's a piece who needs two conductors. And so if we, which means all the musicians and singers and so, treat this kind of music quite normal music, it's much more easier for the audience to get in touch with it. And the second thing is, it's a little bit what you're talking about. The Three Sisters is a piece which was produced the 16th time in the last 15 years. It was commissioned in 1998, I guess. And I think the success of contemporary music is when the audience has the chance to get emotional in touch with it at the first time. This is a very, very important thing, to get an emotional connection. So you don't have to understand every word. You don't have to understand every complex construction of the score. But you have the chance to be touched and to be caught in a way. So.
Good. We're just taking two more questions and then it's lunchtime. You are here.
My name is Thomas Jennefelt, and I'm a composer. I've written several operas, and I have so many threads to discuss. But one thing that I want to also give my opinion about is, how do you learn to write opera? How do you learn to write opera? How do you learn to write music? But when you learn to write music, you do it on a conservatory, you study. But to write opera, you learn it by practice. And that's a fail in our education system. It doesn't exist any real proper education. There are several short courses for students and librettists here in Stockholm right now, I know. But there are, it has to do with the status of vocal music in general, I think, in the composing field, society. When you get your commission for an opera, you are already interesting composer in any field, but not especially in opera. You don't educate composers to write opera. And I think that's you should have at least 2-year master education in how to write opera. Studying how to compose text, study the history of opera. There's so many, study singing, for instance. There are so many fields that we as composers lack well, that was years ago when I was studying, but I didn't get any education. I had to educate myself by singing and studying theater. And I think it's very important when you want to have good operas, you have to educate yourself.
Mm-hmm. Do you think this is something that...
Well, I think it's a crucial point, and I hope I was clear also in my speech about this, that the composers really need to learn the inner life of the opera houses. All up until Verdi, Wagner, Mozart, they were people within the theater. There were people working in the theater. I think to be a co-repetitor or even just to somehow follow the process in the theater will help the composer to understand what's the theater all about. It's not only about composing, it's about understand composing for this apparatus. So I think that's a very crucial point, and I've taken an initiative in Oslo to invite composers to stay as in-house hospitants, or to really just to follow normal. There are very, very many composers that come to us and they say, "I would like to write an opera," and they don't have a clue what it's all about.
And I would agree in the sense that if I was being very devil's advocate-y, I'd say there are a lot of opera people who come to me who think they're opera composers and they're not, or would like to be opera composers but don't realise that they're not. And part of that process, and it's happened to me with the Young Artist Programme for Singers example, it's a perfectly valid part of a kind of process where you go through it and you decide at the end of it, I don't want to write opera. It's not for me, So I would agree with you. And there's that Malcolm Gladwell book, isn't it, Outliers, where he says to be a genius like Mozart or Tiger Woods, you have to have racked up 10,000 hours of practice at your thing, which is like however many hours over how many years. And that's part of it. All those guys, like you said, were, just knocking it out, Necessity is the mother of invention. Sometimes too much luxury is death to art.
Per wanted
but
to come
very
back.
short, I think also it's important to be aware of the friction here, that sometimes the composer out there who really wants to make another opera completely different than we are able to give him, and that's about flexibility. I mean, we also have to be aware of we cannot only do opera in the way we have done it all the time. We have to be flexible in the way that we can. I'm running out of words today. That we can give the composer also a chance to find new paths, and that's the most difficult thing because we don't know about it, And Heine Goebbels is a good example, that he had to sort of really find his own workshop in order to make it, and later the institutions came and found what he did, and they were accepting. Brilliant production, congratulations in Zurich. I saw a fantastic production of Three Sisters.
Yeah, I was there too. Great. Here one question, and here one question, and then we have to say, because it's already past, and I think I hear a symphony going on here.
I'm going to throw out a big question for you. I'm Anne Pajunen. I'm artistic director for Swedish Modern Opera Ensemble, and I'm a performer and composer. You probably won't have time to answer it, but what do you predict will be the biggest change in the production and in this opera for
good
the future,
question.
in the nearest future?
Very good question.
I'm going to throw it out.
If I'm really depressed mood, I'd say less money.
I'm thinking more about the trends in what kind of operas will we see and hear.
And I'm actually, yes, less money will define how we solve the artistic questions we want to answer.
Well, I'm not that pessimistic.
I know you're from Norway.
I think still that money can follow the good ideas, and if you really have a brilliant idea, I think it's still a success is a success, and if you find the right success, you will be able to do it. I think the visual part will play a very important role in the future. The whole, that's going to be, people will be more entertained, I think, to find the right ways of using the whole three-dimensional theatrical scene. I don't think the solution is 3D or video alone. That's not what I'm talking about. But I really think that for a composer who is able not only to present his music but to understand the whole apparatus, I think he'll be very successful.
Yes. I think one important thing that might happen is that the structures or how does a work start, because in the new world the big institutions do their thing, but there's also a big market of freelancers all over. So I think that will influence also the structure on the works. Who are going to sing, who are going to play, and where are we doing it? I think there will be opera in new places, which changes the structure and the content of opera as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. We have one last question here.
Okay.
Can you stand up, please?
Okay. My name is Lina, and I'm a composer. I think you put a big responsibility to the composers, and I have a question. Where is your responsibility to? Because how do you create a creative environment for composers to really be able to create new operas and new ideas? And I don't think it's very strange that you come to an opera and say, yeah, I want my friend A and B and C and D, because of course that's just a way to, you want to do a good job, and if you that's a way to you want to know and collaborate with the people that you know, because you want to do a good job. So I just want to ask you, where is your role of this?
Mm-hmm. Is this something you can structurally influence?
It's supporting and taking the initiative to new works, which I think most modern opera houses are doing at the moment. I mean, it should be more. Working on small stages and also participate in the workshop process to give possibilities for more composers to make the first step before they get the commission. I really believe in this as a very important mission.
But isn't this also like a question of the educational system? Is it possible for the opera houses to actually structurally give this support that she's talking about?
I mean, I think it's hard because, like I said, that you might come with a complete package, and I think it's all brilliant. But a singer could come to me and say, I'm a great singer, will you give me a role? But they still have to audition. They may be right, but they still have to audition. So as long as you realise that the workshop process that Per describes, that we all run different versions of, it's not so much about you proving yourself as us trusting each other, because the thing that you want to create is usually not written yet. So it's our job, not for anyone to worry about, to balance our responsibility to you and to the people we have to justify our expenditure on you. You know?
Nils, do you have something to say about this?
No,
I mean you. Yeah. Well, yeah. Maybe one last question. I think there was one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, he was before, so I'm sorry. And you already had a question. Okay. If he has a quick one, we might get to it.
Hello, I'm Niklas Rydén. I'm composer and just finished my 4th opera, a children's opera in 50 minutes long. And I'm look up on myself as quite experienced on stage performances. But I'm so shocked how hard it is to get music theater opera work to function. And therefore I will really emphasize the need of dialogue from the composer's view also. because I have been so lucky with my team that has been very hard on me, and we have cut in pieces and mixed, and I think it's impossible to predict what will happen during the journey from libretto up on the stage. So I think this dialogue is very important. Thank you.
Okay, it's more of a comment, if anyone would like to. Okay, then a question, please. Great.
Well, my question is, what does the opera composer communicate? What does he imitate? What was really the cue into writing opera earlier was that the composer imitated human voices, their emotional expressions when crying or being happy or whatever. But it was a question of imitating. So my question is, what does the opera composer imitate today?
Well, this is a very good question, but unless there is someone here really who are dying to answer it immediately, I think we should save it for the last session of the day when we're actually talking with composers and with all these good people also. And then we will really dig into this, because this is something that many will address actually in their talks then. So I think we're going to avoid a bit of repetition. This is so short. Okay, you're irresistible.
I read in a book about how to write a libretto. Yes, they exist. The first thing you should ask yourself when inventing or finding a story and you want to write it to an opera, you should ask yourself, does it sing? That's what Carl talked about.
Can I say as well, another good question to ask, is opera the only art form that can properly express this idea?
Good statement.
If the answer is no, it could be an interpretative dance or a movie or something, don't write it. I would say. Of course, everything I say, I then say, oh, but on the other hand, you know.
Great. On that note, thank you very much, Per, BOYE, HANSEN, ANNILESE, MISKIMMON, NILS, SPANGENBERG.